Welcome to my channel. Hit subscribe and catch my latest stories every day. The world had always been serene for me, marked by the gentle clatter of my typewriter and the occasional murmur of my wife, Laura, from another room. As a poet, albeit an unknown one, my verses often centered on themes of love and yearning, revolving around Laura, the sun of my solitary existence. My poems, rich with the raw essence of my devotion, languished in obscurity, hidden within the pages of my well-worn leather notebook. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves swirled to the ground, I decided to surprise Laura with an unplanned lunch date. The local cafe had just introduced a new menu, and I felt a rare surge of excitement. I locked my study door, tucking a small velvet box containing a silver necklace into my pocket, an anniversary gift meant to adorn Laura's neck by evening. The familiar walk took less than 10 minutes, a route lined with many whispered poems. As I neared our quaint two-story home, the unusual silence of the street unsettled me. The neighboring houses stood silent, their windows like blind eyes. Something felt off, a palpable tension in the still air. With a smile still on my lips, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet. "Laura?" My voice seemed to falter in the drafty hallway. Unanswered, a faint sound drew my attention upstairs, the subtle creak of a floorboard, a whisper of movement. I climbed the stairs, feeling the coolness of the polished wood under my hands. At the top, our bedroom door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of light beckoning. My heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and an unsettling dread. I pushed the door open. The sight that met me was a visceral shock. I ascended the stairs, the polished wood felt cool under my palms. At the top, the door to our bedroom stood ajar. A sliver of light beckoned, my heart pulsing with a mix of anticipation and strange encroaching dread. I pushed the door open. The scene before me was a visceral blow. Laura, my muse, the woman who inhabited every line of my poetry, was bound to our bed, naked and flushed. With her was our neighbor Tom, a man whose only previous significance in my life had been a nod on the sidewalk or a brief chat over the fence about trivial matters. In that shattering moment, he was the destroyer of my tranquility, his hands on her as if he had every right. Laura's eyes widened with shock, her lips parting in a silent plea. Tom, caught in the act, stumbled backward, his face a mask of guilt that quickly morphed into defiance. "Mark," Laura's voice cracked, the words dissolving into the thick air between us. I stood there, the velvet box burning a hole in my pocket, my heart a ruinous landscape. Betrayal, a bitter ink, flowed through my veins, etching a dark poem of rage and despair. My hands clenched at my sides, words useless as I turned and walked away from the wreckage of my life. Outside, the air had turned cooler, the sky a brooding canvas. I walked without direction, my mind a storm, the image of Laura and Tom seared into my eyes, a grotesque portrait I could not unsee. Anger, sharp and dangerous, whispered seductive promises of revenge. By the time the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of fire and blood, a plan began to form, cold, calculated. The broken shards of my heart were hardening, transforming into something unrecognizable. I would not let this betrayal go unavenged. I would write my pain into existence, forge it into a weapon of poetic justice. This poem would not be a whisper but a roar. I would break the traitor's life as mine had been broken, and from the ashes, I would rise. The first step was to make them both as infamous as the scandal they had wrought. My revenge would be a masterpiece, each word a nail in the coffin of their deceit. As night cloaked the city in shadows, I returned home, a man transformed. My old life was over. Under the cover of nightfall, I returned to our house, the scene of my unraveling. The lights were off, and the quiet was unsettling, not the peace I once cherished, but a mocking silence. I stepped inside, my movements deliberate, the plan forming with each heartbeat. The house felt different now, as if the walls themselves recoiled from the day's betrayal. Upstairs, I found Laura, dressed now, her expression a tangled web of fear and regret. She reached out to me as I read the room, her voice trembling. "Mark, please, let's talk about this." I sidestepped her resolve, stealing, "There's nothing left to say." But I can explain, she pleaded, following me as I moved to the dresser and began to gather my things. Save it, I snapped, my voice cold. A stranger's voice. I saw enough tears start to stream down her cheeks, but I'm unmoved. I'm a vessel of icy resolve as I pack a bag with essentials. I explain my plan, my words cutting through the tense air. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did, the poems, the pain. It'll all be public. She gasps, a hand to her mouth. You wouldn't. I will, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. With my bag slung over my shoulder, I leave her sobbing in the bedroom. Outside, the air bites at my skin, the night alive with whispers of wind. I head to the one place I know I can think clearly, the local bar, a dimly lit refuge from the sharp edges of my shattered life. At the bar, I find an unexpected ally in an old college friend, Derek, who notices my distraught state immediately. Mark, what in the world happened to you? Over a drink, I spill everything. Derek's eyes widen with each word, his hand tightening around his glass. That's brutal, man. But what are you planning to do exactly? I'm going to expose them, I state flatly. Every secret. Every lie. Derek nods, his expression hardening. You need help. You know I've got your back. Grateful for an ally, I clasp his shoulder in thanks. Derek has connections, ones that might prove useful. He's a local journalist, always on the lookout for a story that will stir the pot. As we plot another move, a figure approaches our table, overhearing our conversation. It's Emily, another old friend, now a lawyer. Her sharp mind could be the final piece in my vengeful puzzle. Mark, revenge won't heal you, she warns. But after seeing the resolve in my eyes, she sighs. But if you're set on this, you need to be smart. Let me help. Together, we form a trio bound by a common cause. Derek can spread the story, turning my poems into public spectacle, while Emily can ensure everything is legal, that my revenge doesn't land me in deeper waters. Our meeting stretches into the early hours as we draft a plan. Each step is a move in a calculated game of chess. I would start by publishing a series of poems online, each one referencing the betrayal, building a narrative that would captivate the public. Derek promises to feature my story in his next column under the guise of discussing the power of art born from pain. By the time we part ways, the first light of dawn is painting the sky in hues of gray and blue. I feel empowered, surrounded by a storm of my own making. The pain is still there, sharp and unyielding, but now it has a purpose. As I walk home, the first poem forms in my mind, a sinister ode to betrayal. This is just the beginning. My revenge has found its voice, and soon it will echo across the city as the first light of dawn creeps through the city. I stand before the window in my small rented apartment on the outskirts of town. My fingertips drum against the cold glass rhythmically, tapping out the silent beats of anticipation. Today, the first piece of my plan unfolds. After a restless night spent scribbling lines and refining verses, I have crafted a poem that seethes with the agony of betrayal. The words are venomous, a barely veiled attack on Laura and Tom, designed to begin the unraveling of their facade. I make my way to my desk, where my laptop sits open, a blank post ready for the first entry in my blog, a new site created under a pseudonym that hints darkly at my true identity. My hands hover over the keyboard for a moment before I begin typing. Each click is a hammer strike sealing their fate. The betrayers waltz in the quiet shadows of deceit. Whispers cling to sheets of sin, a waltz danced in silent beats to the tune of betrayal's violin. The poem goes live with a click, sent into the ether of the internet where it can spread like wildfire. I lean back, the first chains of my plan set in motion. Later that morning, I meet Derek at a bustling cafe downtown. He greets me with a grim nod, sliding a folded newspaper across the table. It's done, he says. His column today discusses the viral nature of pain translated into art, subtly referencing my blog without giving away too much. I scan the piece, my lips curling into a tight smile. Perfect, I murmur, feeling the threads of our plan tighten. That's not all, Derek adds, sipping his coffee. I've tipped off a few online influencers about your blog. If they bite, your words will spread even further. Gratitude washes over me, mixed with a surge of power. Thank you, Derek. This couldn't have happened without you. As we part ways, my phone buzzes with a notification alerting me to the first comments on my post. They are mostly curious, some empathetic. The seeds are sown. The day passes in a blur of activity. I visit a local radio station under the pretense of discussing emerging poets, subtly dropping hints about my mysterious blog. The host, intrigued, promises to check it out. By evening, the poem has been shared across various social media platforms. The public is drawn to the raw emotion and the mystery of the author's identity. Emily calls to update me on the legal side, ensuring that my veiled references are just opaque enough to avoid direct accusations while still being clear to those in the know. Just be careful, she warns. Emotions are high, and people are starting to speculate. You're walking a tightrope. I assure her of my caution, but inside, the fire of revenge burns brighter. I can almost taste the sweet victory as the public's fascination grows. That night, I draft another poem, this one even more poignant and sharp. I schedule it for release in the morning, ensuring the momentum doesn't wane. As I finally lay down, my mind races with possibilities. The blog is just the beginning. Soon, I plan to compile all the poems into a collection and perhaps even hold a public reading, the ultimate unveiling of Laura and Tom's deceit, with the world as my witness. Sleep eludes me as I envision the destruction of the life they built from lies. They stole my peace, but I will steal their facade, piece by crumbling piece. This is the power of a poet's revenge, and I am its conduit. As the sun breaks through the horizon, painting the city in hues of gold and amber, the day of the final act has arrived. My blog has now become a beacon of raw emotion, drawing thousands of eyes. The whispers have grown into a cacophony, a chorus of voices trying to piece together the identity of the poet and the subjects of his scorn today. I prepare for the ultimate confrontation. My latest poem, a scathing portrayal of betrayal, is set to go live during the public reading I've organized at a popular local bookstore. The community is buzzing. The event, marketed as the unveiling of the mysterious poet who captured the city's heart with his words of pain and betrayal, has drawn significant interest. As I stand backstage awaiting my introduction, my heart pounds with a mixture of dread and anticipation. Derek joins me, offering a supportive nod. More than ready, he asks, his voice low. More than ready, I reply, clutching the printed pages of my poems. This is more than a reading, it's a reckoning. The room fills quickly, the air thick with anticipation. Among the faces, I spot Laura and Tom sitting unwittingly in the crowd. They've come, drawn by the lure of the mysterious poet, unaware that they are walking into a trap I've meticulously set. The host introduces me, and I step onto the stage. The lights are blinding, and the audience is a sea of shadows. I read my voice steady and clear. The room hangs on every word, each verse strips away the veneer of secrecy. The poems weave a narrative of love, betrayal, and vengeance. I watch Laura and Tom, seeing the moment realization dawns on their faces, shock, horror, and then understanding. The crowd is oblivious to the undercurrents, swept away by the emotional depth of the words. As the final lines of the last poem echo through the room, I close my book and look directly at Laura and Tom. Sometimes, I say, my voice ringing out, the characters in our stories are closer than we think. The audience erupts in applause, the acclaim is a sweet, hollow victory. I step down, the crowd parting as I make my way to Laura and Tom. Their faces are pale, their eyes wide. Mark, please, Laura begins, her voice a whisper, I'm so sorry. Before I can reply, a commotion at the back of the room draws our attention. It's Emily, pushing through the crowd with a stern look on her face. Mark, she calls out, holding up her phone, you need to see this. She shows me the screen, where my blog is pulled up. But it's not the comments or the views that she wants me to see, it's a series of messages from someone who knows more than any casual reader should. The message reads, I've experienced betrayal myself, and continues, but your poems, they've been my salvation. They gave me the courage to face my own betrayer. As I absorb the words, a realization hits me: the vengeance I aim to exact on two individuals has inadvertently extended its reach, touching others in unforeseen ways. The malice I intended to unleash has strangely become a form of solace for others suffering. Reflecting on Laura and Tom, the flames of retribution begin to fade from my heart. This was meant to be the conclusion, I muse, but perhaps it's merely a new beginning. Resolving to take action, I return to the stage and announce that my final poem isn't about betrayal or anguish, it's about forgiveness, about finding the strength to move forward. As I recite the poem, the words resonate not only with the audience and Laura and Tom but also with me. I realize that my pursuit of vengeance didn't destroy them, it started to heal me. My acclaim as a poet isn't built on controversy but on the universal truths of human experience: pain, betrayal, and the potential for forgiveness. The reading concludes to a resounding applause. People approach me, expressing their gratitude and sharing their personal stories of pain and recovery. In the midst of the commotion, I notice Laura and Tom quietly leaving, their demeanor suggesting relief and perhaps the beginning of their own journey toward healing. As the crowd disperses, Derek pats me on the back. "You did it, man. You turned it all around." "Yes," I reply, putting away my notes, "I suppose I did. The revenge I sought brought me fame, but the forgiveness I've chosen offers something far more valuable." As I exit the bookstore, the sunset stretches long shadows on the pavement, but the future ahead is bright and full of promise.